Exceptional Radio. Exceptional Randos Show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening. Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio. Lawrence Fishburne has aged really well.
Yeah.
Like, he's aged remarkably well. I mean, he's not like, you know, it was the... Oh man, sorry, I forgot to turn off the shorts generator. So it's the 15th of August, and I don't know what it's like in other parts of the country, but it's fantastic here right now. It feels fantastic outside, especially after the last few days of just punishing sweat, heat. Can't even like keep cool in the shade. Have to stand awkwardly so that your body doesn't touch itself because you'll just stick to yourself. That kind of heat.
Wow, I didn't realize it was only 73. I assumed it was probably like 90 something.
Yeah, I mean, you look outside and the sky just looks like it wants to punish you. But then you go outside and it's like, I didn't think that we had polar vortex in effect right now, but it's like the air conditioner's on outside. I'm pretty pleased with this. But speaking of air conditioning, I've noticed that in my limited excursions outside of the house, I've noticed more and more like window units. And maybe it's because I'm looking for window units because one of mine is starting to make a really interesting rattling noise that I'm not really comfortable with. But I'm just seeing them, and these things are fancy. Like, some of them are designed in such a way that they fit over, the windowsill itself, and so they almost integrate into the window without consuming, like, viewing space. It doesn't eat up the window itself, just a small portion of it. And this is really intriguing to me. It's like these things are shaped kind of like a saddle or saddle bags because they straddle the window sill itself. And it's just amazing to me because they finally figured out a way to reduce the eyesore. And it only took them like 100 years. But I guess I really shouldn't complain. This is like a first world concern. It's not even a problem, really, other than the reality that we are running machines that exchange heat to create, a cool environment indoors, but they create monumental amounts of heat. And if, we all run them nonstop during these extreme heat periods, it can only contribute to more heat. And so then I wonder about, the South Coast and how the projections, the long-term forecasting for the climate change that's going to happen, it involves increased heat averages up to the point of uninhabitability in the South Coast by like 2070, apparently. And that might just be accelerated if the world's governments can't come to a reasonable agreement about how to reach, net zero emissions by 2015. No, it's not. I think it's further into the future than that. But still, we've got a significant portion of the developed world that relies on air conditioning, and on top of that, cars, and just incredible amounts of heat generation. I was looking at pictures, like old-timey pictures of this country, of the United States, while it was still developing, like railroad pictures from the 1800s of the developing West Coast, and people were wearing wool pants and long-sleeve shirts in summer. And that just...
Well, wool is weird because it
breathes.
Right, but it also it kills smell. So like, even if you're sweating, you won't smell during the summer
Yeah.
for the most part. Like, it's not gonna, obviously, if somebody's like rolling around in shit, but um,
Yeah.
wool is like an amazing material, which is why
Yeah.
you see people in like. It sounds crazy, but you do see people wearing it in like warmer temperatures
Yeah, but
sometimes.
I'm pretty sure that the average temperatures were lower.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
That's definitely like
Like I'm pretty
that's
sure that like
definitely true as well.
peak summer temperatures in this
I
part of the
mean,
country were probably not as hot as they are now.
but it's the same premise of why you see people in the desert wearing long sleeves and like completely covering themselves.
Oh yeah.
Whereas like you would assume like if you don't live in the desert, you would think, oh, you want to like cover as little as possible. When in reality, because of the way that I mean,
Well,
there's multiple factors in it,
that's
but
like a jungle heat method. But in the desert where it's a really dry heat, you almost want to create your own isolated temperature zone. And I think that's the brilliance of like Bedouin style clothing or the kind of garbs that were developed in the Middle East in that kind of desert environment. They would essentially walk around with a tent that contained their body heat, and their body heat is lower than the ambient temperature outside in the sun. And so that's the level of protection that we're talking about here. That stuff's incredible too, by the way. I've seen like up close and personal the kind of garb that Syrian Bedouins wear, and it's heavy. It's not. It wasn't like. Well, actually, I was in the third grade, so or fourth grade, so I can't really say with certainty if it was actually heavy. It felt heavy to me then, but it was definitely it's like a camel wool shield from the sun.
yeah, and that that's like the silks that a lot of the Chinese clothes were made of, in the sense of like when there's certain materials you can wear in all seasons and you'll be fine, but that's why they cost more.
Yeah,
And it's not just because, oh, this is silk. It's like, worms make silk. Fucking silk is like,
spiders make silk.
right, but when it comes to actually having a value for materials, the more versatile a material is between seasons, the more likely it's going to be expensive, because that's where, again, wools are not
Yeah.
cheap either.
Well, those are silk and wool are extremely labor intensive because not only do you have to process the material into a fabric that can be, or a thread that can be then turned into a fabric, but they also have to, take care of their production line. So you can't just kill off all of the sheep or llamas or whatever wool producing animal you have, or you can't just extract all of the silk from the worm. You have to keep them alive. Years ago, one of our friends, Yejun, when he was getting married, I remember, I think it was his uncle. He stopped me and made a comment about the shirt that I was wearing. And I was wearing a silk shirt, and he said, if the British just hadn't been such assholes, we'd all be wearing this. And
It's so true.
because I mean, it's a nice shirt. It was. I mean, I paid 60.
Oh, that sucks.
I paid
It sucks to think about.
$60. I paid $60 for a silk shirt that I wear to weddings and funerals, and it's a nice shirt. And it's. I think. Oh wait, I think it was 60 yuan. So whatever, that's like $7.50. I paid $7, like $7 I think, for a silk shirt in China, and it's an incredible shirt. It fits perfectly. Incidentally, I think it's the same kind of shirt that is worn by people in the service industry at like the concierge at a hotel or the host at a restaurant.
Well, and I like that. I like the style of Chinese button downs better than the European button down. Like the collar,
Oh, the collars feel
I
good.
fucking hate it on the European, but the Chinese aesthetic on that is, or in the design is much more comfortable.
So my take on that is that they've managed to figure out how to make a drape fit like it was tailored.
Mm,
And so like that collar, it kind of wraps around your neck and then it just kind of everything just kind of flows off of that. And because silk is just so, it's compliant but strong, it just folds around and it just hangs that way, it just drapes. It's cool. It's a very interesting fabric. And, the most interesting part is that you can be wearing like silk pajamas, say, in peak summer heat, and you won't feel like you're boiling inside your clothes. And then you can also wear them in the coldest of winter, and they will keep you just warm enough.
yeah.
Like I'm talking about, like wandering around, inside, or just stepping outside to get the mail or something.
Oh yeah.
But
No, that's the beauty of that material.
yeah, and it's like almost hydrophobic and oleophobic. You have to clean it with seltzer water. You don't use soap on it. It's amazing stuff. Yeah, but to think, if the British hadn't, as if they just hadn't been such assholes, we could all be wearing silk by right now. Like everyone would be wearing silk, and it wouldn't be like this thing. It's like, oh, it's extra luxury. Oh, speaking of that, China figured out a process for cultivating caviar from like sturgeons. So now they don't have to hunt down wild sturgeons.
Oh,
So instead of like rejoicing, Washington Post is like China is responsible for caviar no longer becoming some kind of luxury good. And it's like, wait, these assholes are complaining that now caviar is affordable? What kind of elitist bullshit is this?
yeah, because I think the whole reason caviar is specific is because you're supposed to only be able to get it from the Caspian or Black Sea, in that's what defines the difference between caviar and roe.
Yeah, or beluga or whatever fish egg that they're talking about.
Right. Yeah.
But like things change. Before it used to be that you could only get bourbon if it was made in Bourbon County, Kentucky, and now you can get bourbons made in different counties within Kentucky, or even Colorado, or even Indiana.
Right. Yeah. I mean, or same with Kobe beef.
Exactly.
And or Angus beef for that matter. Angus is fucking,
It's delicious,
in
but you don't have to go to
like,
Nebraska anymore.
and that's kind of where having these transitions between something being regional and then being accessible. Yeah, because the original Angus cattle was from Scotland,
Yeah.
and that's where they interbred it and started like the crazy thing about the Kobe beef is like it's a process. I don't know if it's Kobe or Kobe, but in Japan is where it originated. Where like,
Oh yeah, they
what is it?
like the cows have a group of handlers that are with them their entire life, and they like rotate positions to like massage the cow every day and take it to like the special fields to let it feed on select like grasses, and they've got extra marble because they've got super fat development because they're just massaged. They're basically like, it's like veal but adult sized cow.
yeah,
It's never been stressed out. It never had a knot in a muscle group. It never had adrenaline coursing through its veins. It was never afraid of anything. It was never scared. Had a gentle life right up to the end. And then it probably didn't even know that it was, the end. Lucky ass cows. Well, that's the thing. It's a process. And I mean, I'm sure that there are certain goods, products, whatever, that are distinctly tied to a very specific location. But if that's only an old world thing and it's now possible to replicate the process somewhere else and to have an outcome that is indistinguishable, and I mean like completely indistinguishable, then it's just marketing and branding, and somebody's trying to hold on to the heritage of their marketing campaign or the branding.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of it is then because of the lax rules, anything that is made Kobe style and is not actually from Japan can still be labeled Kobe beef. So Americans might have never eaten Kobe beef and then have been thinking like, oh yeah, I've been getting the top grade, or I've been getting Angus this time. The whole time it was coming from Nebraska and not actually from Scotland either. Yeah. You know, it's like they've never actually tried the foods of these namesakes, and they're getting Western versions of it. And that's,
that's on a really basic level. I'm going to break it down back to our favorite cereal, ramen. You can get the same kind of ramen that's available and consumed in Asia, almost anywhere in the United States, through this magical portal we have that's the internet. And when you see this stuff, you say, oh man, I don't even know what that is. I can't read Korean or Chinese or Japanese or Thai or whatever. I insert some language that you can't even recognize, and you look at the illustration or the image on the packaging, and you can say, oh, I guess that's some kind of meat. It might be beef. It might be pork. I don't know. But it says spicy, or it has a big ass pepper, so it's spicy. I'm going to get that. And it's delicious. And you open it up, and there's this little packet of like dehydrated vegetables, or sometimes you get a really fancy one that has stewed vegetables or vacuum sealed cooked vegetables, and these things are pickled vegetables, and that stuff's amazing too. These things are all available. But then you go to our local store, and there is the American ramen brand that has near identical packaging, and you can actually read it this time. And then, so why not? I'll try it. And what do I find out? I find out that it tastes like, just a rough imitation. The noodles were somehow short. Like ramen noodles, you should be able to wrap that up in a fork and create like a drumstick sized wad of noodle. But these, you could only pick up a few at a time. So they weren't really good for chopsticks. And it just has this, it's the Nissin brand, I think is what it is. It was okay. I ate it. I wasn't going to, stop halfway through the ramen, because I feel like that's just, on the journey of the ramen connoisseur, you have to try all of them. Otherwise, you can't say that you've tried them all.
Well, I think it's crazy the way that there was this Western ramen like rush, we'll call it.
Oh, yeah.
Where they opened up a bunch of restaurants, and then suddenly ramen became fancy, and it was like all these people. Ramen's awesome. It was always awesome, but Americans just realizing it and then starting to pay like $20 and $30 for some fucking ramen, where I'm like, what the fuck is happening here?
Seriously, like ramen places in China are like these hole in the wall restaurants that they specialize in one type of thing. Like there's the pork chop ramen place, and then across the street there's the shrimp ramen place, and then down the street there's the squirting beef ball ramen place, and then you go down another block and there's the fish ball place, and you go down another block and there's the fresh fish place, and it's a little bit more expensive because they got fresh fish, but they might have shrimp.
So here's the thing.
But you don't pay that much for that.
I'm gonna put everybody up on game, from Gordon Ramsay through me. If you look at a restaurant's menu, here's how you can tell if it's going to be good. The more items they have on their menu, the less attention is paid to each item. Period. Period.
100%.
Period. And that's where if you have a restaurant that only has one item, they only have attention focused on that one item. So chances are it's gonna be really fucking good. That's why street vendor hot dogs are fucking really good, because they only have one item and they don't have the option to fuck that item up.
Yeah.
So you go to a street hot dog stand, it's gonna be probably one of the best hot dogs you ever eat in your life, because that vendor does not have a chance to fuck up the one thing that he or she sells, or
Yeah.
they sell.
And
That's where, when you have these menus that are like pages and pages, guess what? That shit is all frozen. They're just plopping it in the fucking microwave or heating it up. That shit is not getting cooked fresh, because they don't have time or the space to do all that shit fresh if there's pages and pages and pages of fucking menu.
So that's like the brilliance of Chinese cuisine, because the difference between like one dish and another might just be the addition of garlic, or the addition of a cashew or cashews, or the addition of sesame seeds. And those are three different dishes that are built upon the same foundation. And then you can select your various protein source. And then those are all variations that can be done readily. But back to what you were saying, there are the ramen places that my dad and I visited when we were in Hong Kong. They, like you were saying, they only did one thing. They only had one noodle option. They had one size, and it was perfect. You know, the broths were all, you could tell that they were making like gigantic batches of broth at a time, because there's no way that, you know, they only make one thing, and these places are almost always packed, and they just go through that stuff like crazy.
Yeah. And that's like with those doner gyro stands, like they start cooking that shit at like 4 a.m. in the morning. And by the time you see the fucking gyros getting sliced, there's already been hours and hours of time put into making that shit perfect.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where, when you go to like a gyro stand, they don't serve burgers, they don't serve tacos, they don't serve fucking hot dogs. It's only gyros, and they just have, or doner, or whichever version it is, and they just have the spit, like slicing that shit. Like, that's the thing. If you don't see a spit getting sliced, just walk away. Unless you know the people. If you're trying to get a gyro or fucking doner, if you don't see the spit, just walk away, because that shit is probably microwaved. It's not like it's gonna be horrible, but you're getting overcharged for some shit that's probably once again frozen and just coming out. You know, sometimes they'll like have a place where they slice it and then bring it in, but more
like a
often than not,
satellite.
right? Yeah, because of space or whatever. But more often than not, if you don't see an actual big thing of meat being roasted, you're just buying, once again, some frozen shit. And that's kind of like, there's nothing wrong with knowing you're buying frozen shit, but when people think that they're buying a fresh meal, but it's actually processed and frozen and reheated, there's so much loss from the experience of eating something that's fresh, that if you don't know that you're not eating something fresh, having that as what is considered to be the paramount concept of that food is why people who end up only eating Taco Bell think that that's what defines tacos and burritos.
Man, whenever when I would go up to Indy, I used to stop at the gyro place in Broad Ripple. And I remember one day I saw he had a spit that was completely foreign to me. It was like an alien looking gyro spit. And I said, "What's that?" He's like, "Oh, that's shawarma." And so,
oh yeah,
oh man, from that day on, that's how I if I see the shawarma at a Euro place, I know they're serious. That's like
Oh yeah, you said it is gyros. Yeah, let's say it correctly because then
gyros.
like that it's a weird Americanization of the word. Like gyro is not accurate. It's gyros is a singular version of the word. I looked this up because I'm like, I feel like Americans fuck this up. So it's what you, if you buy one gyros, that's the singular version, and then plural is yiri. Who would have fucking known? Who would have fucking known? We've been fucking this shit up for years.
So
it's yiri.
We haven't even been saying the whole sandwich. That's like saying a ham and cheese, and how would we ham and cheese and hamachi.
Chibaga.
Chibaga. Bake a chibaga.
That's basically how Americans are pronouncing gyros.
Oh man, that makes me feel like an asshole.
But
I'm not even saying the name of one of my favorite sandwiches properly.
You know, I looked it up like I think about 3 weeks ago, just because I'm like, man, I feel like Americans have completely fucked this up. And sure enough, yeah, if you play how it's pronounced, gyros, the little pronunciation, gyros.
Well, it's not an American word. It's not a. It's not even it's a Mediterranean sandwich.
Yeah, we do cognates, but we do them poorly.
Oh, we've been robbed.
Yeah.
Again, on a sandwich too. That's like, that's like getting poked in like the ribs.
And here's the thing. So that's where so when I was saying doner, that's, the doner is the Turkish, or I think other non-Turkish Middle Eastern countries use it as well. So the gyros is the Greek version, but the doner is a different spice.
Yeah.
And it's like a different, it's cooked effectively the same way, but because the spices are different, it's not the same, and the toppings are different. It's not the same. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
So then you get like different, like in Turkey, you have like a durum doner or an ekmek doner, which I prefer the ekmek doner because it's bread, which durum is a wrap. So you get like a durum of all these different things. So there's like what's it called? I forget the word for meatball right now, but you get like a meatball wrap, but that's different from a doner wrap. And that's like kufta durum. Yeah, because then you have like Adana. There's all these different type of kuftas, so you get like different types of meatballs where like an Adana kufta is different than one from like Bursa or something. Like they're regional variations on meatballs.
Man.
And this is where like durum doner or doner durum, I forget the construction, would be a completely different. It's not even remotely like a gyros. It just, the only thing they have in common is the fact that they're lamb and spit roasted on a vertical spit, but the spices are different, the wrap is different, the toppings are different. So calling these things the same is like just some more European bullshit where they are confusing shit.
I've always been, I've always loved, I love this sandwich style, the vertical spit roast. And I've always thought it'd be like prohibitively expensive, but it looks like you can get a vertical tower rotating rotisserie oven grill for shawarma, kebab, and gyros, and for anywhere between $100 up. And that's not prohibitively expensive at all. They look like the size of a large blender.
It's not the equipment, it's the time.
Yeah. It's
because if you're gonna want to cook some, I think it might take like 7 hours or something to make sure it's cooked all the way to the center.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you have to slice off the outside to keep cooking it so it doesn't burn, like it doesn't crisp. That's why it's such a
very labor intensive process that has to be monitored and
you can't just let it sit.
Yeah, it's an active process that you have to be involved in the entire time. But man,
which is
maybe I can rent one of these things.
I mean, and the active involvement is the difference between juicy, succulent meat and crispy, dry,
leather,
overdone. Exactly, and that's the difference. That's the exact difference. And this is where those crappy shavings are then what gets like packaged up and sold as frozen
or sent to the satellite.
Like, uniform slices, that's fucked up. You know what I mean? that definitely was not done by a human.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't have uniform looking slices of lamb that's cooked on a spit, basically.
Yeah.
That's a number one tell that you've probably got.
Well, I'm thinking like the return of Hamdemonium. It should be like Lamageddon 2, and maybe I can rent one of these things, or maybe I'll just I can buy one if it's $100. That's not that much.
Because then you can make your own. Because I'm sure you'd enjoy making the meat thing or whatever. Because basically, you get to decide what goes on it and spice it accordingly. So
yeah,
if you wanted to do multiple meats on a spit, that's the.
I mean, isn't that the hallmark of a good shawarma?
Yeah. So I'm definitely of the mind that that's the way you get. Like, imagine duck and lamb and wild boar, something crazy.
Throw some venison in there,
right? Yeah, whatever your mind and it. I'm
and then
sure
all
it's
those
not
things
gonna be bad.
Just dripping. You start with the fattiest stuff on top, so it can drip down all those juices all the way through the bottom, and then
a layer of pork or bacon on the outside, just for good measure.
Yeah,
or maybe weave it through. Who knows?
Could have multiple layers of bacon weave.
Yeah,
it could have I could have a bacon. It could be bacon sleeved. At that point, you can have a bacon basket on the vertical rotating.
And
I think I might have to do this, man.
The more we discuss it, the more I think it needs to happen.
Like $100 for a vertical rotating spit roaster. That's not a lot, and $150, and you get a two coil version of it.
People throw down like $50 a piece.
Yeah, at the $200, you start getting into the industrial looking ones. Yeah, Lamageddon too. It's decided we're gonna get one of these vertical spit roasters.
Also, there's a movie called Lamageddon.
Ooh.
I haven't watched it, but when you said Lamageddon, that just made me think. I always see Lamageddon on Amazon Prime, and I'm like, this movie looks just fucking stupid enough where I need to watch it one time. I watched some movie the other night about like Amazon women protecting avocado farms, and it was like, I think Bill Maher might have been in it. It was from the 80s or 90s. It was, if I'm up, like I've been building Gundams lately, so I'll just put on random shit in the background and I'll just like find the most obscure shit and just watch it. And I'm like, how the fuck did this even get made?
A killer llama from outer space crash lands on Earth and begins raining havoc on a group of unsuspecting college partiers. This movie just wrote itself in the 5 seconds that I just read that.
Yeah, the movie's called Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death. I saw that title. I was like, Okay,
Wait, cannibal
what the
women in
fuck?
the avocado jungle of death?
Yeah, because they like they like prance around, not prance. They like train in like bikinis basically. So these dudes will like go and try to fucking like go in there, and then they end up getting eaten. So it's like, I don't know how the fuck. And then you see Bill Maher popping up. I had no idea Bill Maher was in this. And then seeing him in this film, I'm like, oh, this motherfucker's been faking being a left winger for a long time. And this movie is just the proof. Like, Bill Maher can go fuck himself. And he's such a piece of shit. And this movie is the fucking proof that he's always been the piece of shit that we now know he is. Fuck Bill Maher.
Holy crap. I've seen this before.
Have you?
Yeah, I watched this when I was like in high school. This is like a Skinamax Showtime late night.
Yeah,
It's starring
totally.
Shannon Tweed. That's
That's how you can tell.
yeah. He's got Shannon Tweed in it. Man, she and Gene Simmons, the bass player from Kiss, have like a family. I don't think they're married. They've been together like completely committed to each other for the entirety or whatever. That's the mythology. And she's like the queen of soft core titty movies on Skinamax and late night Showtime.
Right. Yeah.
Like, if she was in it, you could guarantee that it was going to be watched.
Yeah, you can guarantee there's gonna be boobs.
That too. Like copious amounts. Like beyond
for no reason. Yeah.
Beyond like gratuitous.
Like, yeah, what's beyond gratuitous? Shannon Tweed's like boob shots. Because they come for no reason and often. Because then you go back and watch these 80s and 90s movies, and there's like,
it's titties and guns.
Yeah, for no reason. You're like, okay, number one, how did they get like green like this? And number two, this is obviously just an excuse for like these dudes to like grope these women and simulate sex with these women. This is because then what is it? Stripes with Bill Murray. That's all that movie was. Like, how can we get Bill Murray in a situation where he can grope these women?
All deadpan.
Yeah.
Deadpan
and
woman
let's
groping.
build a movie around that. Like, fuck, man. So many of these movies were just like, okay, we have this woman. We want to see her naked. Build a plot around that.
Yeah. That's like
80s and 90s films.
Yeah, pretty much. That's everything on Cinemax, Showtime, or Encore, or Stars after 11 o'clock. Like,
yeah, it's really insane how much those periods are indicative of the culture that only saw women as objects.
yeah.
And like didn't give a fuck about only seeing women as objects, because then that's the culture that shifted into, oh, let's go save women from the Taliban and fucking Al Qaeda. Let's go protect these women and liberate them from oppression. Like, motherfucker, you were just seeing women as nothing but pure objects, and you still do. You're just pretending you don't now. So it's weird to see this shift from the movies, like just publicly treating women as objects. Oh, because then they start making fun of the women's lib movement. I watched another movie. It's like really telling about the times, the way that they treat inflation. It's like How to Beat the High Cost of Living was made in 1980. The entire movie is basically just about how these three people are trying to deal with inflation, and they like go from contemplating prostitution to like eventually just robbing like what's it in the malls, how they used to have those money like machines where they would put the shit in and you get in and grab the money when it was like blowing in the air. They end up robbing one of those. But I watched this because I'm looking at it as social commentary on, number one, the fact that they're making fun of inflation and people having to deal with that. The idea of that being subject of a comedy that's not a black comedy, because it now, I think it plays as a black comedy because we've seen how the inflation played out and it's not good. So this is like a prophetic black comedy now. But the fact that they were trying to pass this off as an actual comedy, and then the climax scene is Jane Curtin dancing naked to distract all the dudes while they rob him, and it works. And it's like, it's too much to unpack all at once, to the point where I'm like, oh my God, I can't. There are so many things about this film where I'm like, they saw it coming. They saw all this shit. They were driving off a cliff, but they were too high on cocaine to fucking turn the wheel because everybody was laughing all the way when they drove the economy off the cliff. It was like, let's make a movie about it. And just fucking driving off the cliff the entire time.
Holy crap. So I want to swing back to Shannon Tweed really quickly. In the 80s, she made 36 movies, and that's a pretty substantial number for modern actors now. 36 movies to have, like, to get kind of big distribution at all. But in the 90s, she made 55 movies. Like, what the fuck? And then there's this brief period of time in the early 2000s, she only made 8. And so she went from, like, you know, being the Skinamax booby queen to being the voice of Momfish on SpongeBob SquarePants in 2007. That is actually a wide range of, a diverse range of talent.
You know,
there.
I think, I honestly think Shannon Tweed.
She was on Frasier, the TV series.
But I think she was really the first actress to transition from like skin flick to serious, like semi-serious. She's not a serious actress in the sense of like, she's a good actress, but Hollywood does not take her seriously.
Yeah.
But they're damn close. Whereas nobody could make that transition before. If you were like in porn or skin flicks, you're staying in skin flicks. But Shannon Tweed basically busted down that door for everyone. Her and Anna Nicole Smith. Everybody forgets about her.
Yeah.
She's a fucking terrible actress, but she was like one of the first people to go from like Playboy centerfold to like, hey, I'm actually trying to be taken somewhat seriously without you looking at my tits. And Shannon Tweed, I think, was really the first to be successful at doing that in a way where, yeah, she's on kids shows now.
Yeah.
Like, if it's going to be a crazy trajectory for kids to find out who she is, grow up, and then be able to go find her naked. Like,
yeah.
That's the shit where you're like, whoa, this person.
I mean, she made a series called Body Chemistry and made 4 of them.
It's the same shit with what's it called?
She was in Detroit Rock City.
Deanna
That's
Troy,
a serious movie.
What's her name?
Oh, Marina Sirtis.
Yeah, when you find out, oh yeah, she used to show her tits before Next Generation, it like blows your mind as someone who grew up with that person, and then you're like, in your adulthood, you're able to go see them naked, and it's like a weird, I don't want to call it entitlement, but like, it gives you the false sense of access. And I think that's the thing about the notion of where people develop these fixations, because they start off with this, identifying this person they're attracted to. And over time, the more you're able to see this person in all these different emotional situations, and then see them nude and completely vulnerable in what is an intimate situation, but then made accessible to a general audience, it gives the individual viewer a false sense of connection to that person.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, I see how this shit plays out, and it's like, it really could fuck with, I mean, anything could fuck with somebody's development, but if somebody's not really given good guidance, it could really easy develop into some toxic and unhealthy attachment to these people, where you can, like I said, grow up with them on SpongeBob and then go back and see them all like in all kinds of compromising positions where you're like, it's the same shit with teachers. When you're like now in a situation where all of these kids, some of them are going to be able to go find pictures and videos of their teachers online. And it's like, that's not on the teacher. That's not on the teacher. It's like society has made this romanticization, hyper romanticization of sex as this inaccessible thing that only can be attained when you only do these certain things. It like puts this unhealthy taboo on sex itself, and that's where it like catalyzes these unhealthy fixations. So it also prevents, because then if I would have told all, like if when we were teenagers, if I would have told everybody when we were teenagers, like eventually Britney Spears is going to be on Instagram showing her tits because like she wants attention just like everybody else, you'd be like, no fucking way. But here we are in 2021. Britney Spears is on Instagram showing her tits because she wants attention just like everybody else. And it's like the wall between celebrity and regular person is very hard to tell where that line is. And I think that then makes it even easier for people to start creating these unhealthy attachments where like the stalkers and like person that would go actually commit a crime against a famous person used to be fairly rare, but now it's like people are bold as fuck. I don't know if you watch the bare knuckle fighting shit, but this dude hopped in the ring and basically started what could have amounted to a riot because people just started fighting because this dude jumped into the fucking ring and hit one of the people that had just finished the match because he was famous. So that's where I'm like, the number of people that exist now just magnifies and multiplies the number of people that are willing to cross the line into chaotic acts with famous people that are out there just trying to be out there. And it's like, it's hard to exist without then putting yourself in the line of sight of somebody's target you don't even know exists. And it's like this weird, we have created this weird, not we, but tech bros who have no emotional intelligence have created this environment that amplifies the likelihood of somebody simply trying to exist on the internet, having their image being put in the face of somebody who will be seemingly felt like they're being antagonized by that person existing, pushing them to do something. And I think that's where, like, between whether it's like women just trying to exist sexually or just trying to exist, period, then you have these angry incels who respond getting mad at women like, oh yeah, you slut, like putting your shit out there on the internet. No wonder you're single because you're always on the gram posing. It's like that antagonism is the same shit as right wingers and left wingers fucking on Facebook all day arguing about social justice and It's the same antagonism, no matter who's the protagonist or who's the antagonist. It's the same shit.
Lately on Facebook, I've been seeing this image making the rounds of Chick-fil-A, and it's this anecdotal story about how somebody was ordering and the person behind them was impatient and making some kind of commotion. And so the person pulls up and pays for their food and says they're paying for the person behind them, and then takes the receipt and then says, "Hey, I paid for this stuff. Can I get all my food?" And then leaves with this person's food. And it occurred to me, like, this is, I mean, obviously this is a joke, but if this were real, and there is a person who would go to Chick-fil-A and then pay for somebody else's food and somehow get it, then, and I think I don't even think that's possible. I'm pretty sure Chick-fil-A makes you pay for everything in the drive-thru, like because they have people standing outside to take orders. But I think that if there's a person out there that would go to a place that is, the focus of social tension on the internet, and they would go there to buy food, and then just because somebody else behind them thinks that they're taking too long, they would spend additional money just for the privilege to make somebody else uncomfortable, who also wants to go to this restaurant that is, and I think they're calling it Bigot Bird right now, actually. But these people don't have, it's not ideological. They're just mad because somebody is interacting with them. I don't even think the people that go to Bigot Bird even, I don't even think they care. They just want a chicken sandwich. And so if they find somebody that is getting like high and on the horse about the political or interests of the Bigot Bird board or members of that board, then to that person it's like, well, fuck you. This is just a good ass sandwich. And they can't even recognize what's going on.
Keep your politics out of my meal.
And so it's like, there's kind of an analogy with playing chess with a pigeon that eventually will just knock over the pieces of shit on the board and walk away like it defeated you, or defeated whoever it's engaged with. And the reality is the bird can't even recognize what it's doing. Chess doesn't exist to a pigeon. And so it's almost kind of a futile endeavor trying to interact with these people who are just ready to lash out at people or engage in some kind of argument on the internet, someone that they probably don't know in real life, will never interact with in real life. And that somehow there's a group of people on the internet who seem to find that more interesting than real hobbies or real activities or actually interacting with people, which can also be done over the internet, which is what we do every Sunday.
Well, I think in that is Americans are just antagonistic by nature in the worst way. Rebel without a cause.
What does that even mean?
Exactly. It doesn't fucking mean anything, bro.
What can you rebel against if there's nothing to rebel against?
Oh my God. It's the dumbest shit. It's the dumbest shit. And the fact that Americans are still obsessed with this terrible ass actors movie that has no fucking real profound meaning, and they've attached such profundity with just being what you feel is uniquely rebellious for no reason. I'm just a rebel. I don't care. I don't care what I'm rebelling against. Just nothing.
He's a maverick.
You like milk? I like water. You like water? I like milk. I'm a rebel.
Orange juice.
I put Coke in my cereal.
Ooh, madman.
Yeah, I'm a rebel. No reason, no cause. I'm American. That's what we do. So it's like this crazy bullshit. It's pseudo individualism because it's the same. All those people are the same and they think they're unique. Stockpiling my guns, got my AR-15, got 12,000 rounds of ammo. Government, bring it on. Every one of those motherfuckers is the exact same. Got my cans of soup. I can last for 3 months with no grocery store. Maybe I might need some toilet paper every now and then. I don't know about that one. But I got my cans of soup and my ammunition. Some seeds in case the nuclear winter happens and I gotta grow some food. But the toilet paper, I don't know about that one. We can definitively say these preppers are not prepared for a toilet paper fucking drought. If they're prepared for anything, it's not that.
Yeah. I remember at the beginning of pandemic, I'd already had some giant water storage jugs that I got to go camping, got to have some water when you go out into the woods. And I remember filling them up and then just setting them off to the side. Because I thought for a brief period of time, I was like, oh man, what's the worst case scenario? Our water supply is compromised. Food supplies are compromised. Supply chains are compromised. I built a freaking UVC chamber to sterilize incoming mail because I thought, that would probably be a vector for this if the idea is to isolate. Of course, not everyone isolated. So what can you do?
The fact that we have all these variants is just, it's indicative of these people who don't know why they're rebelling. And it's only a matter of time before some new flu happens where it's like, yeah, we're dealing with COVID. I guess it's only, like I said, because we have bullshit regulations where.
Holy sweet Jesus. 2 days ago, there were 155,000 new cases of COVID in the United States.
Jesus Christ.
What the? So last year when I was tracking this stuff every day and, trying to just keep a visual log of it for myself just so I could see the numbers, I actually had to stop because the numbers were just terrible. And I think I stopped, looking at them every day, multiple times a day, obsessively, when they broke like 100,000 cases per day. And so here we are, like a year later, practically, literally a year later after I stopped paying attention to this stuff all the time, and we're at 155,000 new cases 2 days ago, 71,000 cases yesterday. Today there are 36,000 as of right now. Like, oh wait, no, that's in Iran. Where is? Well, that's just nuts. We all failed each other. People who didn't take it seriously, the rest of us who didn't implore them to take it seriously or implore them enough.
I mean, I don't think we failed. Look, this falls squarely on the shoulders of the people who didn't take it seriously. All this shit, we have no responsibility from here. They are anti-human. They are effectively committing manslaughter, and those people completely bear the responsibility. I absolutely refuse to accept any responsibility for what they have done, and implore people to not internalize any of that stuff because it's their fault. It's fucking 100% their fault. They are the ones that did this, because in other countries, all the people that did what we did, they're the ones that have no new cases being reported now. It's 100% the fucking rebels without a cause that are to blame for this bullshit. I don't want the microchip 5G. Those fucking dumbass people who were talking about 5G back then, who want to act like that shit never happened, who want to act like they were never saying 5G. They want to act like that shit.
I forgot about that nonsense.
Yeah, because they're trying to act like
So
they were
dumb.
never saying, because they want to say, oh, COVID ain't real. But at first they were saying it came from 5G. It's the same fucking people. So no, those people, those dumbass fucking monkeys. I'm going to call them monkeys. You fucking hairless monkeys are to blame. Those people.
I bet monkeys would even like isolate themselves if they saw each other getting real sick.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that monkeys are smart enough to recognize, hey, that person's sick. Stay the fuck away from them. Let's see. There are, from as of 2 days ago, reporting there are 46 countries that haven't had any new cases out of the list of 222.
46 countries that believe in science.
That's terrible. That's so fucking terrible. It's like 1/5 of the world takes science seriously. 20% of the world takes science seriously. And these aren't big countries. These are countries with populations less than 1 million. Nope, I was wrong. Tanzania has 61 million, and then there are a few. Then after that, there's only a few. Cameroon has 27 million.
Woo!
You know.
So these are also countries.
These are all countries in Africa. It looks like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I was about to say these are countries that would have been framed as being backwards before, but somehow these motherfuckers have figured it out.
How not to get COVID because they figured out how to avoid Ebola.
Yep.
Man. Big ups to Africa for pulling together for the big W. Like, good gravy. Seriously, like, these are all African nations that don't have new cases of COVID. They have like total deaths under 82,000 in no, those aren't African countries, those are European countries. They haven't reported today then. This is from yesterday, dude. Holy crap. Maybe Spain and Sweden just aren't reporting numbers.
Yeah, I think some countries stopped reporting, right?
Well, fuck those places. Liars.
Yeah. I mean, I think some states even stopped reporting in America.
I believe you are correct. It's like, well, it's one of the Delta outbreak states.
Yeah, many states have stopped reporting COVID data, apparently. Woo, that's fucked. I mean, that is really fucked.
Does that even like...
Whoa, holy shit. Obviously, Florida is the worst, but they were only doing one update per week in June. Whoa.
So if they were only reporting once a week, a couple months ago, and now they're not reporting at all, and the media is reporting all sorts of outbreaks in Florida, and DeSantis is under fire for his anti-mask mandate order, and how that backfired. I think he got sued by several cities, and they were like restraining orders to allow them to enact local mandates. Like, talk about screwing the pooch. Like,
whoa, holy shit! There's been multiple. Like, I had heard a story in the past week about there was like a period where for 23 minutes no ambulances were available, but it's happening so frequently that it's like happened in Memphis. It's happened in Florida. It's happened in California, Louisiana, in Memphis.
So not only are we running out of ICU beds in big cities, we're I read this morning that a person had to they got a call in the middle of the night to drive somebody 6 hours or 16 hours to Indianapolis because there were no beds available. That was like the closest bed. Let me see if I can find that. Because that to me is just scary. Yeah. No, it's August 6th at 8:55. A trauma nurse got a call to transfer a patient from a small town in Arkansas to a hospital in Indianapolis, 600 miles away, because every other hospital they tried to call any closer was on diversion status. They're sending people in Arkansas to Indianapolis because everything else is full. Everything closer than Indianapolis was full a week ago.
Jesus Christ.
Like that is unbelievably terrifying to think about. Our healthcare system has collapsed in portions of the country. Yeah, I retract my previous statement. We didn't fail. We've done a lot of things correctly. We've isolated and stayed the fuck away from people and avoided large crowds.
We didn't hang out for a fucking year.
I know.
We didn't hang out for a fucking year.
We've done a remote show for over a year.
Yeah. Like, and in that's where I'm like, we didn't fail. We did everything right. In fact, we did more. We went out of our way to do more than we had to. Like, our responsibility as citizens was to mask up and fucking get vaccinated when we got our chance. That was the bare minimum. We did that and way more. And that's where I'm like, it's our job to make sure people do not let themselves be gaslit into fucking bearing any responsibility for the fucking actions of all these. They're fucking murderers at this point. They're genocidal murderers. Over 600,000 fucking Americans have died. I think that's the number, right?
637,439.
Those people are to fucking blame, not us. They are 100% evil. They are selfish. Fuck those people. And I am never, ever, I don't want to be identified as the same species as them, whether we classify ourselves as having advanced or them having regressed. I don't fucking care. I'm not the same species as them. I absolutely refuse to even be classified as the same species as that person. Call me homo empathetico or whatever the fuck you want to call me. I am not the same species as that pathological, murderous, selfish half of the fucking American society. I refuse. I absolutely refuse at this point. And I'm definitely not feeling any sort of guilt. In fact, like I said, I feel at this point that I'm not saying I'm morally superior. I'm saying I'm not even the same fucking species as that piece of shit fucking class of they're subhuman. If I'm a human, they are subhuman. 100%. Because it's not a race. It's a fucking class of shitty individual fucking selfish piece of shit that you will not get a goddamn vaccination, wear a fucking mask, stay out of the fucking public. I fucking hate those people. I've lost friends. I've lost family for those people. They fucking declared war on us.
Yeah.
That's what they did. So fuck those people. I am absolutely, and this is me tempering my mood. I'm like censoring myself. I'm being as nice as I possibly can, because if I truly said how I felt about those people on air, I know I'd be on all the lists. I'd be on all the lists for sure. Just for saying how I felt about those people. Because The thing is, the difference between me and those people is I can temper my barbaric and savage feelings and not act on them. Those people are incapable. Those people are incapable of that shit.
They can't even wear a mask.
They can't even wear a mask, let alone temper some savage shit that is there because I've been wronged in blood. I've had a blood wrong and I refuse to start a blood feud. That is me overcoming my base and savage instincts. I will not even verbalize those feelings, yet I still feel them. That is the difference between me and that piece of shit fucking species. So that is where I absolutely, unequivocally refuse to be classified as the same species as those pieces of shit because they cannot control themselves. They do not care about protecting other people in the same way that I do. They do not let themselves temper their fucking own emotions for the sake of others where I do. So I refuse. I'm not the same. I'm not going to be classified as the same thing for some, oh, be humble. No, fuck that. Now is not the time to be humble. Now is not the time to be nice. Those people are fucking genocidal. This shit was all them being fucking, they're the cannibals that are just waiting for shit to collapse. They're trying to prod society to collapse. Those are those people. So fuck them. Fuck them. They are responsible for all of this shit. We had a chance. This was our moment to come together as a species. We had a fucking enemy that did not care. This is the alien invasion moment where we come together as a species and fight off the invasion and find our utopia. But guess what? These fuckers ruined it all. They ruined it for all of us.
Some of them sided with the aliens, it seems.
They sided with the goddamn aliens and tried to make it out as some fucking rebel cause bullshit.
So
fuck them.
In Indiana, there is a running 7-day average of 9.7% positivity. And with the 8.4% is a cumulative rate. And then the total confirmed case count for unique individuals is 18.5% with a cumulative rate of 21.3%. So that means that roughly 10% is the 7-day rate. And 20% of people getting tested are positive. That's actually pretty scary to me. That means that we are, of the people that are having encounters or contact or whatever they're calling it, 1 out of 5 are contracting COVID.
My heart is through the roof right now. My heart rate is like 132 beats per minute because I am so fucking livid at these people.
And that means that like, 1 out of 10% of people, or 1 out of 10 people who, and that includes the 2 out of 10 people who are getting tested. 1 out of 10 people outside. Straight up, dude. 1 out of 10 people outside right now in Indiana have COVID, whether they realize it or not. And 2 out of 10 people who encounter that 1 out of 10 person will contract COVID.
I am ready for my booster shot.
Like, all our couches are getting fucked.
Yeah. Fuck all our couches. Fuck all our couches. Which, oh my God, man. Like,
9 people are dying every week on average right now in Indiana.
Oh my God. I'm sick of these people. I'm so sick of these people. I hate Americans. I really do. I really hate Americans. Like, I can't not say that anymore. There's like obviously people like yourself that happen to be American who I don't hate because you're like my really good friend. But like Americans fucking suck, man. I can't stand Americans anymore. I really can't. Like, I'm at the point where if a flood came and wiped this country off the map, I'd be okay with dying just for this country to be taken out of the equation. Like seriously, this country sucks so bad. This is like one of the worst countries on the fucking face of the planet, mainly because it thinks it's so special. It's like a shitty place. And the whole reason I want to say that is because that orange clown called African countries shithole countries, like on everything, the fact that there are quote unquote African countries that have no reported new cases, who are actually following protocols and still reporting new cases. Fuck this country, man. This country's such a shithole.
So the Roman Empire only lasted like 500 years. And the British Empire really only lasted about 400 years. And so I'm just kind of trying to extrapolate the current iteration of Rome. It might only last 300 years. It might only last 250 years. But we're here for the bread and circus portion of the empire. And so
hopefully we're seeing the collapse of all empires, because like shit's happening globally in a way where I think we as a species are finally getting to a point where we like are getting close to, we don't need the monarch, or we don't need the king, queen, capital person that sits on 90% of the capital while the 10% or 90% of us plebes just fucking fight each other over the rest.
Well, in the 1950s, we got to see the first iteration of modern warfare, and it didn't involve soldiers on the ground or bullets or missiles or airplanes or bombs. It was done with economics, and
oh my God,
people want to talk about the Cold War ending at some point because they signed some treaty, but Cold Wars don't end because economies are these fluid entities that are a reflection of commerce and production and all these other things that it's a complex soup.
Okay, so you just nailed on like 5,000 different things. But in short, let me say this. What we think of as modern is really identified most of the time with the microchip evolution, number one. So let me say that first. What is actual modernity is really like 5,000 years old. It originated in China, and Western civilization depends on No. It depends upon disconnecting modernity from China so that it can take credit for reinventing modernity. And in the process, it is losing economic warfare that China has been fucking perfecting for the last 5,000 years. So this is also where this is full circle. Like, one of the best things I ever did was like start learning about Taoism in like ancient China and modern China. Like I started learning about Taoism in undergrad because I was seeking an explanation for higher things without human bias as much as possible. And Taoism was the closest thing I got to being the most scientific answer. So in that light, what I realized was that Taoism at certain points in time supported Chinese culture, and at certain points in time threatened Chinese culture. So understanding those nuances led me to start to understand Sufism in the context of Islam, and that held a similar existence as Taoism. So that said, having a more fluid understanding of how social psychology can be affected by religion or philosophical
or timing,
insight,
because the version of
timing is
Taoism,
everything.
like Sun Tzu and Lao Tzu's version of Taoism are not the same.
Exactly,
but they are
that's
the same.
Perfect. That's a perfect example. Timing is everything. So there are all these things you have to understand about being able to see the fluidity of duality in the context of a society that does not even fathom duality, to then be able to better understand what's actually happening. So this is where China's economic warfare is not led by the government. That is the natural evolution of the Chinese body as an economy, which is more decentralized than it first appears at first glance. So in that regard, you cannot have a single monarch unilaterally leading in China in the same way that Americans have claimed because of thousands of years of decentralization. So there is a lot of context in the sense of like, it's an ebb and flow in China where you get monarchs and unilateral leaders trying to exert control, and they will get control exerted to the edge of the empire for a brief period, and it breaks down. And it's one of these things where it's like, you see this happen, and as long as you are able to look at historical context to see that this is all ebbs and flows, then it makes more sense than the way it's being presented as like this homogenous state from the Western perspective that can't fathom duality.
I've always appreciated Taoism's ability to lay the foundation to understand multiplicity of concept, of being able to understand something from multiple perspectives by looking at it from the dual state of light and dark. And that it's like a two-dimensional exploration that all in a lot of ways allows you to see things more completely and more in a more three-dimensionally in a sense, because you can't talk about Taoism without thinking. You just can't. You can't even talk about it. You can't even read it without starting to think about it, because the nature of Taoism is to ask questions and then to seek balance for the most part. And then that's just like the first step.
The closest you can come is to get into a stream of consciousness only after being heavily educated in both free flow thought, free flow body motion, and the subject matter on which you speak. On that note, I hit a free flow on speaking on Taoism in the context of Western framing in a unilateral, like Chinese communist government that tries to make everybody robots. But what I was trying to frame is that in the Taoist context, you can't have a robot.
No, it's impossible.
That doesn't think. It's impossible. It's like the dual existence of things makes it impossible for somebody to be like a completely robotic controlled thing that has no semblance of autonomy, because you have to have autonomy to contribute to the greater good. Like if you cannot make yourself viable as an individual, then you are no use to the greater good. So both of those things must be worked on to coexist. Whereas in the individualist, like singular line of thought setting, you can only work on the individual because the greater good does not care about the individual. Yeah. And that's what we're taught. We're literally taught that from day one. Only make sure, because when you get to those pearly gates, St. Peter's going to check and see what you did. Wait, he's not going to see what we all did? He's just going to check me?
Out of context.
Yeah, I did all this great shit. Meanwhile, everything around me's burning. I didn't fucking do it. I was just trying to make sure my actions were good. I didn't step in to save anything. I didn't step in to rock the boat. Meanwhile, the boat's fucking sinking. St. Peter's gonna say, that's cool? Well, that's fucking stupid. That's a real dumb like I never accepted that paradigm from the time I was like able to think. From the time that I was able to think on my own, I never accepted the Christian or the Judeo-Christian framing of heaven as being only responsible for oneself, even down to the notion of, am I my brother's keeper? Well, fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. Guess what? The first thing my dad did when I was like aware enough and big enough to protect my sister, guess what? You protect her. You make sure she doesn't do anything. If my sister stole something, I got in trouble because it was my responsibility to make sure she didn't do anything stupid when he wasn't around, because he couldn't be around 24/7. So this is where the notion of like only being responsible for oneself is fucking stupid. It's just dumb. In a species that cannot survive like from day one on its own, the notion of only being responsible for oneself is fucking dumb. That's just, there's no, like, I could say other words for it, but they just be worse words for dumb. I'm being nice. Anybody who holds only their own existence above the greater good, like, and you don't think of society's long-term existence in your actions, well, you're a piece of shit.
I mean, dude, these are the people that think that they could like survive the apocalypse on their own, probably.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. They sure do, and they probably will never ever do anything of note or
except for preparing for the apocalypse.
I'm saying no. These people will fade to obscurity because they will never contribute anything to the greater body of anything useful in society, because that's not how they think.
Yeah.
You can't contribute to greater good of society long term if you're only thinking about yourself. That's not how that works. And the crazy part about that is these people are so worried about existing, like in the sense of like, oh, I'll pop out a fucking little farm of babies and that's how my legacy will exist. Well, guess what? They're going to do the fucking same thing because you're going to teach them shitty values and they're never going to think about anything great. So none of them are going to fucking cure cancer. None of them are going to come up with anything fucking scientifically useful. None of them are going to invent anything for the greater good because that's not how they think. And they're just going to fade into obscurity. These people will never, ever, ever be remembered by history. Nobody remembers fucking Jim Bob who just farmed his fucking shit and took care of his farm, and that's what he did till the day he died. Nobody remembers that fucking...
Speaking of remembering Jim Bob, do you know any of the names of the champions or of the houses they fought for, the gladiators of Rome?
Not one.
Not one. Do you know, I mean, other than the Colosseum, do you know of any specific arenas that were used?
Nope, not one.
Okay.
Here's the thing. The only gladiator I know of by name is probably not real. Because like from the fucking movie, like I think he was a mishmash of real people.
Well, Spartacus was real, and there was a guy that did lead a slave uprising. I think it was like the second or third servile uprising. And they did, lay waste to significant portions of Rome. But that's the only one I can remember. But he was never a champion because they started killing people before they had the uprising. And we have a romanticized version of his life as, a champion of some small gladiator house. But yeah, there's only so much that I can accept from a Star's movie series or TV series as factual, especially when they tried really hard to make it look like the 300 with that over dramatized, like spray painted on, extra cut body look action.
Yeah. So Maximus was fictional, an amalgamation of Narcissus, Spartacus, and Cincinnatus.
Huh. Okay. So we know of one place that they did this stuff, the Colosseum, and we know of one guy that may have been a champion who was actually the leader of a big ass uprising.
Yeah.
But that's it. So I'm wondering, in 1500 to 2000 years or whatever, is anyone going to remember who Hank Aaron is, or what baseball is, or will they even care? Will Michael Jordan be a household name? Will they even know what basketball is? If basketball does exist, would it even be the same sport? Because it's not even the same sport now that Michael Jordan played then.
In the same way that the Michael Jordan heads, like, mostly don't know about Oscar Robertson. I'm
just going to say, if any of those guys tried to play against Wilt Chamberlain, they all would have ended up with like black eyes and twisted ankles and Like, because the game that Will Chamberlain played was way more violent than it, or physical.
Here's the thing. I talked to this older cat. He must have been like 6, maybe 70 or something. But he was like at Crispus Attucks when Oscar Robertson was like still a big name.
Oh wow!
And he was like asking me what I knew about Oscar Robertson, and I was like, "Oh, great basketball player, blah blah blah." And he's like, he was mad. He was like visibly, he was angry that that's all I knew, because apparently Oscar Robertson was like
the man,
one of the smartest. No. He was like super smart and accomplished academically in a way that people just don't even know about, because all they know about is the basketball.
Yeah.
So like all of these academic and intellectual accomplishments that Black people have been making in the past 100 years have become overshadowed by this obsession with sports accomplishments, which, as you allude to, nobody's going to fucking remember that shit in 100 years. Nobody's going to give a fuck about. No, I don't give a fuck about Michael Jordan now. I was like a huge Michael Jordan fan when I was a kid. I still have his jersey from when I was a kid, but that's more so just reflecting on nostalgia for that time period. I don't give a fuck. In fact, fuck Michael Jordan.
That dude's from Indianapolis.
Yeah, Oscar Robertson. He went to the same high school as my parents. And it's the same high school as this dude I was talking to, or I'm alluding to, which is also why he was so mad, in that these people have accomplished so much shit. Like,
dude, his Wikipedia page has like zero mention of anything academic.
Right. It's like, but it mentions the desegregation. So somebody being able to overcome desegregation and make academic accomplishments is way more big of a deal than any basketball shit. And the fact that all of his like academic accomplishments got overshadowed for some fucking ball through a hoop, I hate it as a Black person, because this is what Black culture has been like. It's like rapping, fucking sports, or entertainment, fucking shucking and jiving vaudeville. That's what Black people are allowed to become by the society, because all of the academic, intellectual, George Washington Carver accomplishments have been made to seem as if they're not real. And some white dude, and this happens to white women as well, like some white dude comes and takes all the fucking credit, and then the people that actually did the fucking work are made to seem like they are conspiracy theorists who had their claim to have their work stolen. There's just these crazy people that never could be as smart as this fucking Steve Jobs white man. There's never any way Oscar Robertson could have been anything close. That's why he went and played basketball. He went and did his little athletic thing, because that's what Black people are good at. They came from slaves. They were bred for fucking athletic shit, not for the mind. So it reinforces a bunch of stereotypes that people don't even know that are there, when they only see people of certain like ethnicities and certain roles. It's the same reason Asian men are not seen as viable sexual partners, because they've been spent like not just Chinese, and I mean Asian in the sense of Indian men as well. They've been spent for decades being the butt of jokes in media. So this is why Bruce Lee is pointed at as being the first Asian man on screen to dare to have confidence. He's the first fucking one. And that's why Black kids like gravitate towards him. That's why young Chinese kids, Chinese American people around the world gravitate towards this man, because he stood up to this paradigm and dared to say, guess what? I'm a confident motherfucker. I got reason to be confident. What you gonna do about it? I'm Bruce motherfucking Lee. I'm Bruce motherfucking Lee. What you gonna do about it? He was the first one to say that to white Hollywood. And guess what? They couldn't do shit about it. He just kept being Bruce motherfucking Lee. And that's why that motherfucker's spirit still lives on to this day. It's not because of the fucking movies. It's not because of the martial arts. It's because his spirit, he dared to be great. When people dare to be great in a society that tells you you're born to be a fucking servant, you're born to be low, when you dare to be great, guess what? That spirit is going to live fucking forever. I don't care what movie he made. I don't care what martial art he did. That motherfucker was great. And he goddamn dared to be great in the face of some people that told him he wasn't shit. And I want to keep that spirit alive.
Man.
And that's the difference.
So Stephen Chow, he's the filmmaker who did Kung Fu Hustle and Shaolin Soccer, a bunch of other movies. Actually, he's funny. He makes mostly comedies. I'm pretty sure his Wireworks team is responsible for all the flying in the Matrix. So they're like
legend. This dude, Stephen Chow.
Oh yeah.
He's like, that's where he's like.
Oh, he's amazing.
All of the shit we think of when we think of Kung Fu flicks is like Stephen Chow, basically.
Yeah, his production company is like the best. Well, in the movie Shaolin Soccer, they create a character to look like Bruce Lee. He's their goalie, and so he goes out with the yellow suit, and then the dark soccer team kills him, or brutally wounds him. And so on the way out, Stephen Chow says something that loosely translates to "Your spirit may leave the field, or no, your body may leave the field, but your spirit will remain with us." That's the impact of Bruce Lee. He can influence a generation of filmmakers to completely, elevate the wire work craft and to take kung fu movies to a place that, I mean, he took it to the Matrix.
Mm-hmm. I remember watching Shaolin Soccer. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I wasn't like, I was into the action, but it seemed like, this feels like
it's a rom-com.
I mean,
and an action movie.
Like it felt like exploitation.
Oh yeah.
In a way where, like, at the time I didn't appreciate what exploitation films have their place, which is where, again, at the time I did not appreciate it, but I feel like going back on it would be a lot better to watch, like, knowing the way things have evolved. But yeah, like, it felt like, let's put kung fu on a soccer field, like, let's do, and if that film had been more successful, it would have been like Shaolin basketball, Shaolin football, and it would have turned into a whole franchise. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? And that's the way it felt at the time. But knowing that it didn't turn into that, I feel like it would be less offensive on a watch now.
He pulls no punches. Like, he made a movie called God of Cookery, which is about a TV chef who goes to the Hong Kong chef championship, and he's threatened by an up and coming hotshot chef, and he's got to learn, like, Shaolin cooking. And so, like, a significant portion of the movie is him getting the crap kicked out of him so he can learn how to cook, basically. And then he has his divine moment where he figures out how to do it, and then afterwards it's just kind of funny, but it's playing on, like, tropes of street food and, like, poorly washed ingredients, all the way up to a fancy restaurant with poorly washed ingredients. And I'm talking about, like, shit in the intestines, like, not even washed.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's the level. But they're making a criticism about fancy restaurants in Hong Kong serving shit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point of that movie, I think, is that they were making this social commentary on the state of fine dining and high cuisine, and how it had gone to this place of elaborate marketing, and they'd sacrificed the way things taste just so they could have branding and make money. And that it was like a reminder that food is about eating, and it's supposed to be shared, and it's supposed to be good. And sure, that's great if somebody can make some really advanced clay pot dish, but if it's not as good as a simple pork and rice dish, then is it really amazing?
Right.
I mean, I think that's why ramen has remained as simple as it has for so long. And it's not until I'm going to call it the pandemic ramen era is where we see a lot of these attempts to juice up the ramen and make it more than what it is without
I
full
think it
understanding
happened
of what ramen is.
it happened in bigger cities before it migrated all the way here.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing it on the East Coast. I forget if it was, I think it was Connecticut. They had like a ramen shop where I'm like, okay, I guess.
Well, Noodletown was in Bloomington 15, almost 20 years ago.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That was like
that,
that was a legit Hong Kong ramen place.
yeah. So
We had one.
it's weird. Yeah, it's weird in the sense of like, but that place was
legit, and they didn't serve like ramen noodles. They had like
no
all the noodles, and you could select
You could
from
tell
them.
it was legit too because it was like always like international Chinese students in there.
And you didn't hear any English coming out of the kitchen.
No, not at all. Not at all. That was like one of the most authentic places on campus besides the faux place on
4th Street.
there was one on 10th. Oh yeah, there's one on 4th too.
Mandalay
but
Bay.
yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, that the 10th Street International stuff was the most concentrated of like
Dude, the 10th Street like Asian strip mall. That
Yeah.
place when we first moved to Indiana, there was a I guess it's now the International Market, but before it was the International Market, it was just a corner grocery store that catered to the international students. And so it was really cool to move to Indiana, and lo and behold, there's a place that has like Chinese candies.
yeah.
Holy cow, this place is crazy.
Yeah, that's where you it's like I always look for the places that there's the fewest people speaking English because that's where you're gonna get the most authentic shit as far as I can tell. Like there's a little it's literally called the Asian Market.
Yeah. Yeah.
On 10th Street. And it's just like all these, they have Japanese shit, they have Thai shit, they have Chinese shit. So
Oh man,
it's an amalgamation of
my parents have given me jars of sauce to make stir fry with, and there's no English on these things except for like the brand, and it's like Lom Key something or other like that. It's like there are no instructions that are in English. My dad and I just experiment with like some variation of a tablespoon or less, and most of the time it comes out really well. Heat it up in the bottom of the pan right before you're ready to mix it in your vegetables. It absorbs some of the water and the oils, and then you stir it up and turn that heat up, and then turn it back down, and boom, stir fry. I really reduced it down to like way too few steps, but that stuff is like, it's exciting to cook with that kind of stuff because you don't want to overdo it because then it's inedible. And I don't mean you can't eat it. I mean, it's just like the flavor is just overwhelming. And then if you underdo it, then it's not bad. It just tastes like it needs a little bit more. So, keep track of it. I love that stuff though, because it's like an adventure. I still wonder about the broader impact of year one of pandemic on cooking, and if people are cooking more, and if they're being more adventurous with their cooking. Because I feel like the first 6 months of lockdown were like, or first 6 months after the first lockdown were like an explosion of, look at this bread that I made, look at this soup that I just made, look at this roast that I made, look at this thing that I can eat now. And that stuff it went away with a lot of arguing on social media, and then now we're back to memes and bad jokes.
It's funny. I wonder, if there's just a difference between people who need guidance and those who can self-direct. Because I'm like picking up new hobbies and
Yeah.
you know, like you're saying, I learned new shit to cook, but I haven't. If anything, I've like eaten out less in the last week than almost any time ever. You know what I
I
mean? In the sense of like, there
I
are
had a
things.
hamburger the other day because I helped a buddy move a bunch of stuff from Burger King. And let's see, I think I had a hamburger maybe a week before that because Sheila and I went fishing. And before that, I think it was like 2 or 3, maybe even a month before that, I had a hamburger with my dad from Burger King. And we went out to dinner for my mom's birthday. So that's like 5 times, 4 or 5 times that I've gone out in the last year. Holy crap. I mean, I don't go out because I know how to cook and I don't want to sit in a room with a bunch of people unless it's like a really good reason. I am genuinely concerned about, the long-term stability of certain types of restaurants because some restaurants have low volume and higher prices, and part of that's because they have really good food. But I wonder how many of those restaurants that are running such narrow margins, like how many of them can actually survive all of this without, you know, the return to economic activity that we keep getting pushed towards. I was reading that there is a big push within the office work sector where a lot of people are starting to consider taking pay cuts just to stay in the remote world. And some people are even considering leaving their job so they can keep working remotely. And it makes me wonder, like, how much of the office work environment is actually necessary? Because I work from home. I do everything from home. And it's a completely different environment. It's not stressful.
It's only necessary for people who can't complete tasks without being monitored. That's
Yeah.
really what it's only necessary for. And those people are a product of constantly having somebody there to prod them through, aka the American school system, which is basically centered around task performance in the same style as an office environment. So it's like the American school system has drifted more and more towards just trying to produce office drones and not actual thinkers. Like, I don't think the American school system, like the public school system, was never about producing thinkers. It was always about producing good citizens. And people have to acknowledge that, because it's like, yeah, on an individual
It's also
scale,
a broad daycare service that allows people to
right,
work.
while their kids who are not good enough or fit enough to work in the fields are occupied. That's what it started off as. And the sooner Americans acknowledge that, it's like, yeah, individual public schools can be good, but public schools are not meant to make people smart or critical thinkers. That's not what public school education is for. And people have to admit that before we can do anything about it as Americans. Because the problem is, you say that, oh, I went to public school, I had a great education. Well, that's probably true, and most likely not. But it's very possible that people who went to public school could have a great education. The problem is that's not what public school is meant for. And they, like, the people who have anecdotal experience with good teachers in a public school system,
They got lucky.
will fight. Exactly. They got lucky, and they will fight you on that point as if their experience is ubiquitous, because they never understood like representation and statistics, because they never got that far. So
Most of the people that I know went to school with the same group of people their entire lives through elementary through high school. And I wonder how many people, because I've not met everyone, But I wonder how many people have changed high schools or changed schools or had to move, and like how different their experience was from the people who knew the same group of kids all their lives. Because I didn't meet any of the people that I know in Indiana until I was in, like, I couldn't have met anyone that I know in Indiana until after I was in the 6th grade and after. And by the time that time, there's what, 6 years of primary education where these people interact on a regular basis. They all know each other. Mm-hmm. So for people who change schools or move, there's a like a socialization deficit that exists where, sure, they've socialized some other community, but no two communities are the same. I wonder how many people actually have broad enough scope of experience to say whether or not their elementary education was good or not. And of those people, how many of them actually have accurate memory of that period of their life?
Yeah. It takes a lot of self-awareness to know where your education level stands in the grand scheme of things. And I think a lot of people, especially in America, want to delude themselves into a higher level than they actually are.
Well, education and intelligence aren't the same, and intelligence and intuition aren't the same.
That's
and
100%
intuition
true.
And experience aren't the same. And like, we live in such a convoluted world.
Yeah. Very much. So, yeah, and I think part of that is, again, when you are able to be honest with yourself about those things, then it becomes a lot easier to operate within that paradigm more effectively. And I think that's where, again, these people who are just worried about St. Peter and pearly gates and own my own thing, well, they only operate for themselves and don't, in not contributing, they're all the same. None of them stand out. And they think they're being so individual, but in fact, they're just fading into the crowd. That's the craziest irony of the obsessive individuality culture, is you just fade into the crowd. I love it. I love that paradox. And I love that Americans put themselves into obscurity by trying to buy individuality off the shelf.
I think it was Dash from The Impossibles who said that if everyone is special, then no one is. And so similarly, if everyone is unique, is everyone actually, if everyone is expressing individuality the same way? Wow, what a fancy, whoever figured out how to do that, they pulled the wool over generational wool over the eyes.
Well, and this is kind of in the distinction between individualism and collectivism. It is the crux of why communism is framed as inherently evil, because that notion of collectivism threatens individualism at its core. So any form of collectivism, unions, we'll fight unions in America. Like the fact that there are significant groups of people who want to come together to negotiate for better treatment from their employers, and that there's also people who have somehow managed to convince an equally significant portion of the population that this is a bad idea, when both of those groups are actually responsible for economic activity.
Without the workers and without the consumers, the people who are controlling it all don't make any money. But somehow they've managed to get these people to fight each other instead of the real, the puppet master, essentially. This is the same problem that we've got with. Oh, it's the same problem we have with politics. Our politicians are essentially secretaries, and they are supposed to act on our will. And some of them seem to be just doing what a very small group of extra wealthy people want to do. And by some, I mean quite a few. I mean, we saw the division like right down the aisle with the infrastructure bill, which I think, yeah, cool, sure. We've needed like a big boost to the infrastructure for quite a while, but man, they couldn't even agree that it needs to be done. They had to just push it through.
That's crazy. You can't agree on shit.
That's like the nature of American politics right now. Mm-hmm. And we're on the tails of two administrations that were like executive action after, well, I don't want to say they've been doing executive actions for quite a while, but highly publicized executive actions that became the focus of a lot of conflict and tension. And so I think that it's just we're divided along the stupidest lines by people that their goal is just to keep everyone else from paying attention to them, and they're succeeding. Mm-hmm. It's frustrating as hell too, because this is all exacerbated by people who don't want to read.
They want to get their information from some guy on YouTube that just breaks it down in a way that anybody can understand.
Well, let me break it down for you, because this is the way it's at.
He tells it like it is.
Man. At least I don't feel like YouTube is yelling at me anymore. There was a solid like 3 or 4 months at the beginning of pandemic where every video was it was all like everyone was charged up because they had all this bottled up energy, and so it was coming out in the YouTubes. It was just this monumental intensity, and it really turned me off from a lot of the channels that I was watching before. But that seems to have subsided.
I don't know if you've seen it. I mean, you probably haven't necessarily, in that you aren't with these groups of people, but in the same way that like people were doing dead drops of USB drives, right wingers have started doing that now with conspiracy theories because they've been deplatformed.
Yeah.
So they're thinking they're like in this little secret hacking group, when they're just basically passing USBs between each other with like bullshit videos that are getting taken off of YouTube. And that's kind of like the notion that we've gotten to that point where these people are covertly or what they feel is covertly sharing information, but also
they're just getting it's social engineering.
Yeah,
they're being
and
engineered.
That's kind of where, it like
they've been turned into a zombie.
They're Manchurian candidates, and that's kind of what, again. But my phone just started listening to me for no reason. Anyway,
hey, they're listening.
Yeah, that shit definitely is weird. But the fact that these people have been turned into Manchurian candidates without, they don't know what the fuck a Manchurian candidate means. So the fact that this shit is happening, it's like, on the one hand, hilarious to me because we can see it, but on the other hand, it's like, it's
actually scary.
It is actually scary, but I still take solace in the fact that most of the world isn't like this. It just feels like we're in some weird ass experiment, which is why, one of the reasons we do this show is so It's like I feel like we're doing Erie, Indiana right now.
Oh yeah.
Go watch Erie, Indiana. Tell me the people who wrote that shit weren't aware of the weirdness that was marketing and fucking using media to manipulate people. And the sequel series too. Watch both of those and tell me those people weren't fucking aware of what was happening in a way, because there's even a whole episode where TV is made into a religion. And when I saw that, I was like, man, we're in this fucking episode of Erie, Indiana every time we do the fucking show. We are Erie, Indiana.
We are in a fishbowl.
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.